Hi, Alanis. When you write an album, what kind of release do you feel afterwards, and does it seem to be sort of therapy for you? Do you get to get more insight into some of your actions after you finish writing them?
Yes, songwriting helps me with gaining objectivity on what's happening in my life, to the point where sometimes I'll hear a song that I've written many years later, and it will clarify it even much longer after the fact. I know that every night before a record is released, I wake up with a start, and I'm completely freaked out at the thought of sharing what's going on with me publicly, and then I fall back asleep and all is well.
I remember when Jagged Little Pill was released, and for some reason, we could not find your first two albums in Canada. It was as if they were pulled from the shelves. Wow. No one mentioned them. I don't know.
A lot of other people found them.
Yeah, I don't know if they're available. I had it on cassette, but I don't know if they're available now. I know you have a sense of humor about things, and not that it was bad, but I'm just saying, back in that day.
I have no shame,
with
is what
the
you're
hair,
saying.
With the hair, those hair days.
Yes. Thankfully, I wasn't alone in that hairstyle.
No, I was.
Imagine
exactly.
I was.
I
Everyone
had it
else's
too.
hair was flat, and mine was huge.
Even Steve had it, I think. I'm just wondering how you would feel if those albums were re-released, because when you look at the Stones or other artists, their whole catalog is usually available.
With the internet, it is pretty available from what I understand, and most people I know who want a copy of it have one. But I don't really know what's happening with those records in terms of reissuing or re-releasing, so I have no shame about it. So,
were they pulled back then?
is that even possible?
I don't know.
To pull a record?
Who would know such a thing?
I know nothing. I just work here.
Next question.
Speaking of those earlier albums, I mean, one of the things that you managed to do, which I found just really fascinating, is that you really reinvented yourself almost impossibly. I mean, you went from a very pop and very light-hearted sort of stance to a very, organic. Was it a very difficult transition, especially in terms of figuring out how you were going to fit in afterwards?
Well, I think if I'm to stereotype and generalize, which I hate to do, but I'll do it. My Canadianness was very extreme to begin with. I had a little passive-aggressive thing going on, so it made sense to me that I would be repressing in some ways the more personal subject matters of songs as a 16-year-old. I don't think I was emotionally mature enough to back it up. I barely am now. So then when I went to Los Angeles, I remember thinking that I wanted to, knowing that I wanted to just write my personal experience. So it started off a little bit more fictitious. There were a couple songs in my teen years that I remember singing that resonated on a personal level, but I think the courage came when I turned around 18 years old, where it was enough of fictionalizing and it was time to be autobiographical, which was terrifying, but much better for me.
There's been these things popping up on the popular media channel YouTube, sort of offering a really close glimpse into sort of the private aspects of your own, I guess, things you away from your music and on. And are you trying to sort of utilize this sort of form as a new way, that sort of transparent dangling carrot, the next phase, in your career? Because you do it so well, really. What is it all about, really?
Well, I've been doing it since as far back as I can remember, and now really all that's changed externally is that there's a forum for it. So I've just been pretty consistent in loving the thought of capturing on tape in a very humor-filled or non-precious way what's been going on. Our entire flight here, we landed at 5 a.m, was filmed and will show up somewhere. So nothing's changed in terms of how I've approached it, but thankfully, or not thankfully now, there's many more ways to share it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but okay.
Our next question is from Alan from CBC.
Hey, Alanis, congratulations. And hello from Ottawa. We CBC Radio, we just did this tribute concert in Ottawa where we got all these Ottawa musicians to be doing the songs of Alanis right from Fate Stay With Me. We got the...
I heard. I'm sorry I wasn't there. That just sounds...
It was incredible.
Okay.
But I was wondering, as we were having these jazz musicians, opera stars, pop singers, root singers, African guitarists, et cetera, reinterpreting the songs, the thing that kept coming up for everyone was just the different levels of meaning they could find the songwriting to be reinterpreted. And revisiting something that you wrote when you were 10 years old, they were able to find this beautiful song within that. You said earlier that you sometimes look back on music from the past and it gives new meaning to you. Could you expand on that a little bit? Could you give a few examples or one example of a song that has meant something different to you?
Yeah, there's a song on the DVD called Feast on Scraps. I think there are 10 or 11 songs on there. I can't remember how many. One of the songs is called Sorry to Myself. And I remember having written it at the time. It was irrelevant for me at the time. And then 6 years later, I listened to it again, and it's incredibly relevant at different points much later on. So I often feel like they're prayers in some ways to myself. And I'm on tour right now, and I'm singing songs from the last however many years, 13 years, I guess, at this point. And there is not one lyric where I cringe. And that says a lot to me, because I could easily be having a cringe festival if I'm singing songs from 10 years ago. So
I'm really curious what your first initial thoughts and reaction were when you opened up your door and there was a boob cake from Fergie.
a bouquet from
A boob cake.
a booty cake.
Yeah.
Lots of laughing. And I'd had a party that night, and I wanted to eat the butt, but everyone had put their hands on it as a joke and taken photos, so I couldn't eat it because there were fingerprints all over the cake. Sweet and adorable that she got that it was in the spirit of fun.
My name is Logic. I'm covering Canadian music on behalf of StolenFromAfrica.com, Stolen from Africa TV. I really respect the humanitarian with you. There's a lot of, we really don't really see that in a lot of artists today. What I want to know is that how have you maintained that, throughout the years that you've been in the industry? That's really so cutthroat, and that's really designed to, I guess, even devalue a lot of artists. How do you maintain yourself through all that, all the trials and tribulations?
How to maintain the soul part, you mean, or the contribution part? I guess?
The contribution, the soul. I mean, just standing up for what you believe in, really, in an industry that's kind of somewhat of a dictatorship, really.
Right. I don't get out much, and I stay insulated in to whatever extent that I need to in order to stay somewhat sane. I also went through a period of time where I started compulsively contributing because I had a little bit of guilt about being in the public eye and having all this affluence, so I thought that I should contribute, and I did it almost compulsively for a while. And then I realized that if I just let go and just return to my natural state, that I would innately want to contribute, and I wouldn't have to force myself or do it compulsively. So it's a natural thing for me to want to contribute, and I often find myself going back typically to artist rights, women's issues, and environmental issues, but ultimately my main passion is about the human condition and healing the ruptures between myself and other, and myself and spirit or God, or all the splits that happen in humanity. I'm fascinated by it and fascinated about the healing process. So that's where I put most of my energy these days.
Our next question is from Larissa from City TV.
You're being inducted into the Music Hall of Fame. You're also being honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award. At this stage in your career, for you to be honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award, I mean, how do you look at that?
I think it's great. I feel grateful. It's a challenge for me to let myself be recognized for anything. So, great opportunity to stand there and take it, as my friends say. And I'm not precious about it either. I see it as an amazing encouragement to continue on my path.
But surely you have a longer way to go.
Sure. I really do think I'm going to live till I'm about 103 or so. So, there's a lot to go.
Hi again. One quick question and one proper question. I know you've been on an extensive tour. Is it just a coincidence that today is a day off, or that you made it here? Because I know you had a gig yesterday. I think you have a gig tomorrow.
Yeah. I think it is a coincidence, even though I don't believe in those. But yes, I think it was just well timed.
Okay. The other thing is, a few weeks ago, Neil Young, he was at, I think, the Berlin Film Festival, and he came out and said that he doesn't believe that music has the power to change the world anymore. And I know there were a number of artists I got emails from that were kind of alarmed, and I was kind of alarmed that when I read it too. How do you feel about that?
I think there's a beautiful humility to that comment, and I also think that not one single person can affect any huge change on the planet that's going to change the consciousness level of an entire ecosystem. So I think it's the critical mass or the collective that can really affect huge change. So I think there's a humility in that comment that I really resonate with, that it can lean toward the sort of messianic complex if you think that you're this one creature that can change the planet.
I mean, I think he was saying that it once could, like perhaps in the 60s,
60s
but
and
now
70s.
he doesn't feel it can. Maybe the quality of music it's a statement on.
Maybe he doesn't like the music he's listening to right now. He can always go back and listen to the music in the 60s and 70s, so thank God for him.
Hi, I'm Melissa from Tunage Magazine. My question is, you've pretty much done a lot. You've done TV, you've done film, you've done music, and I think in most people's eyes you're seen first and foremost as a musical artist, a songwriter, a singer. Do you find it easier now to move into other forms of media when you want to, like doing a TV stint or a movie stint? Do you find the lines are a little more blurred and there's more flexibility than in the beginning, like when you first started out?
No. Schedules are schedules, so there are a lot of opportunities that I feel privileged to be offered that I have to say no to all the time because I'm on tour or vice versa. But I remember being 10 years old, I think, and the proverbial fork in the road presented itself at that time too, between continuing to be on this television show I was on or making music. And the great thing about music is that it requires me and perhaps another person or two, as opposed to 50 people and crazy budget and that kind of thing. So it's a little easier to write songs.
You have a new album out, or coming out very shortly. When you actually create albums, do you have to have a challenge for them, or what do they have to sort of qualify for you in order to really get into the mood for them?
Well, I'm never really in the mood to write. I hate writing. So I have to structure some sort of disciplined thing. So what I'll do is I'll realize it's time to write, because typically an album consists of 2 journals full. And before the writing of Flavors of Entanglement, I wrote, I think I filled about 7 journals. So I was teeming with sort of creative pregnancy, so to speak. And I just schedule time in a studio. And then I drag myself there. And then it happens.
Well, when is a song ready for you?
Usually 20 minutes after we start it. If a song writes itself, there's an effortlessness to it that I appreciate. And if a song is a belabored, arduous process, I stop it and I throw it out and I don't even finish it. So it's done when it writes itself. I just kind of show up.
A quick two-parter, Alanis, and I want to make this fast, but obviously this gentleman mentioned earlier on in your career, you started out as a real teen pop idol. Your dance career was doing really well here in Canada, and the Junos and all that, and that's how you really got your start. And every album of yours in succession has sort of been a little bit different from the next, and of course when you started your collaboration with Mr. Ballard, sort of started getting more rocky, obviously. But is there any point when you do future album releases you might make a more return to that electronic or dance-oriented sound? And the second question is there any truth to the rumor that they're going to have a You Can't Do That on Television reunion, and would you be a part of that?
I didn't know. I didn't hear about that, but sure. That'd be fun. So yeah, this record that I just finished, I worked with Guy Sigsworth on it, and he's worked with Imogen Heap and Bjork, and so he's more technologically inclined to begin with, sonically, and just as a human creature, he's techno man. So there's a nice fusion of my sensibility and his, which is part of why I wanted to work with him. But I never really think in terms of what I had done at 16 versus what I've been doing recently as being that different it's just a continuum to me. I just sort of move around
Evolution,
it.
yeah.
Technology, organic sounds, wasn't writing as autobiographically, although, I could pull some lyrics out from the records that I wrote when I was a teenager, and I would say, yes, that was what was happening. So, I'll return. My sensibility is also to embrace the technology.
Right.
Very exciting. And the organic sound I'll always love. So,
Alan from CBC.
You mentioned, there I am. You mentioned hating the writing process from time to time.
It's the worst.
How do you get past that dislike of that part of the process and guide yourself towards the studio? I don't know whether the studio process is hated just as much as the getting the stuff on paper.
Well, I hate anything other than eating bonbons. So everything's sort of, at least for me, it's just showing up. Like if I can physically be in the room, then I can surrender and let the process move through. And it's such a lovely process. Whereas when I first started writing with Glenn Ballard, I would be so overwhelmed and I would be crying all the time when I was writing. And now when the process is happening, certainly there are tears and moments, but it's something I rely upon now. It's not, I used to believe in the concept of writer's block and those kinds of things. Whereas now I think that writer's block simply means that maybe you could be watching a movie instead. It's not something I pressure myself with. But structure is mandatory for me. If I don't have some sort of discipline, it's not going to happen. So.
Okay. So do you have one more?
With the last 18 months seeing Radiohead giving, doing the pay what you can, and groups like the Charlatans who aren't massive, but they still were able to get 30,000 free downloads. With your success with the My Humps on YouTube, was there ever a time, not to knock what the record labels are doing, but did you ever stop to think, maybe I can just do this all myself and release what I want to release, get a song out there without having to go through the whole process of the scheduling and the promotion and everything like that?
I think there's pros and cons to every model. There's pros and cons to, well, the pro to doing it on your own is that there's a certain sense of freedom, I guess. And I love hearing about the stories of some of my colleagues and peers who are striking out and doing it on their own. My eye really would be toward tweaking the model of record company contracts with artists, making it more of a partnership. The whole concept of getting married and then someone saying, you're going to marry me, but if you ever want to get divorced, you can't for 6 years. It's like, well, I don't totally understand that. But I think if it's, let's get married and let's be partners and let's everybody win here and keep each other updated about what we can amend and evolve, I think it's great. So, but I also have benefited so greatly from having been, semi-partners with different record companies throughout my lifetime. So lovely experiences there. And there's a lot of Warner Brothers people around the planet that I've really been supported by. So I think the model would be something I would shift.